Persuasive speech. What should we teach our children about sex? Growing up in an extreme evangelical religion, I was given only one way to look at sex before marriage. Don't do it. Sex education is a hotly debated topic in our country and around the world. Who should be responsible for teaching children about sex? Parents or schools? What should be taught, and at what age should you start talking to your children about sex? Having been taught with an abstinence-only approach and having had a child when I was still a child myself, I have a very strong opinion on this topic. While doing research for this speech, I was bombarded with statistics from different organizations on which form of sex education produces less teenage pregnancy and STDs. I found the information to be less than reliable. Each group seems to have their own agenda, and it made me question how so many different surveys could get so many different results. So I turned to the Center for Disease Control, who seem to have no agenda other than keeping us healthy. I found a study that was conducted between 1991 and 2007 that included teens from 9th grade to 12th grade. During part of the time this survey was being conducted, 2001 to 2007, President Bush was in office. His policy on sex education was very clear. He only allowed government funding for abstinence-only programs. So I was curious to see how this might have affected teens during this time. The study asked teens 7 questions. Have you ever had sex? Have you had sex with 4 or more people? Are you currently sexually active? Did you use a condom during your last sexual encounter? Did you use birth control before your last sexual encounter? Did you use drugs or alcohol before your last sexual encounter? And have you ever been taught about AIDS or HIV in school? Upon first glance, it appears that President Bush's policies may have had a positive result, as percentages on questions 1 through 3 had decreased. So I pulled out my calculator to see just what was going on. During 1991, the percentage of teens having sex was 54.1. That number dropped to 47.8 by 2007, a decrease of 6.3%. But upon closer inspection, I realized that during the years when President Bush was in office, there was an increase of 2.2%. It went from 45.6% of teens in 2001 to 47.8% in 2002. Then I took a look at the 4th question. Did you use a condom during your last sexual encounter? The percentages on this question are pretty low across the board, ranging from 37.5% in 91 to 35% in 2007. During 2001 to 2007, the percentages fluctuated between 33.4 to 35%, so that's a 1.6% increase during Bush's presidency. Considering these numbers, it would appear that Bush's abstinence-only policies had little to no effect on the sexual behavior of teens. But those are just numbers and political posturing. What about real-life situations? We are all born into different family, social, and religious environments, so there can't be a one-size-fits-all standard for sex education. Each parent must use their best judgment about how, what, and when to talk to their children about sex. But having said that, let's be reasonable. We were all teenagers once, so we know what it was like to have all those unfamiliar hormones coursing through our bodies. And no matter what adults told us about how our bodies were changing and how we should handle those changes, it was a time of serious self-discovery, as it is for all teens. To expect that our children will be better or different than us or their peers is, I believe, a naive way of thinking. Sex is an uncomfortable subject even among adults, but it is important that children have a basic understanding of how the human body works and the responsibility that comes with sexual activity. If parents begin the dialogue about these things at home, no matter how uncomfortable the conversation is, children will carry that information with them. Because our public schools are provided to us through the government, they are open for political legislation. This bothers some people who don't want their children to learn about sex and other subjects that are in opposition to their own views. As a parent, you can take the extreme step of removing your child from an environment where they may learn these things and school them at home instead. This is what happened in my case. Because of this, I was only able to get one view on things. Upon graduating from high school, I didn't even know what a condom was. Because of the changes going on in my brain and body, I made some very unwise decisions. And because of my lack of knowledge about how to protect myself, I became pregnant when I was only 19. Even though I knew it would displease my God if I had sex before I was married, I did it anyway. For me, the hormone levels in my body were higher than my desire to please God. I feel this may be the case for many children who are raised being taught abstinence only. Though not all of them go through the trials of an unwanted teenage pregnancy, there are still other risks that they may be unaware of, like STDs. I believe that no matter what our personal beliefs are, and no matter what the school system teaches about sex, it is important for children to see both sides of things. Although these little human beings are ours to mold and shape and keep safe, they will ultimately grow up and have to make their own decisions. The best thing we can do for our children is arm them with as much information as we can before we set them free in this big, scary, confusing world.